Yes. And everybody got mad with me for saying that. You know, I didn't mind telling the world that I was gay. I was gay. And, it's nice to be happy. He was something else. In fact, I never met anybody like him, really. I don't think nobody met anybody like him. But I don't mean he was bad. Now, listen, I'm not saying nothing bad about him. God bless his soul. He was a rock and roll legend. The flamboyant icon America both worshipped and feared. But when the stage lights dimmed, Little Richard lived like he was making deals with the devil. His sermons were only smokescreens, hiding a string of secret affairs soaked in lust, power, and fear. He spent his entire life dodging the question, who did you really love? The real shock came when his one and only legal wife refused to stay silent. Not only did she expose the truth about their marriage, she also revealed 5 gay artists who left Hollywood stunned. 5 secret lovers of Little Richard, each carrying an earth-shattering secret. Let's get into the story right now. Let me know where you're watching this from in the comments. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of water or tea, sit back, and let's start this journey together. 1. Billy Preston, the 5th Beatle and a hidden love. The name Billy Preston is no stranger to fans of soul, funk, and rock from the 60s and 70s. He was the magic hands behind iconic Beatles songs like Get Back, the only keyboardist ever credited on one of their album covers, and a pivotal figure in the legendary sessions of the Rolling Stones, Ray Charles, Eric Clapton, and dozens of other greats. But behind all the glitz, Billy carried a secret he never dared speak while alive, a secret tangled in loneliness, abuse, addiction, and a long, ambiguous relationship with another rock legend, Little Richard. Billy first met Little Richard in 1962 at just 16 years old during a southern U.S. tour. Richard was already a rock and roll superstar. Billy, on the other hand, was a church trade organ prodigy discovered and mentored by Ray Charles. Richard was immediately drawn to the boy's innocent charm, gentle spirit, and God-given talent. But what shocked the crew was that Richard was no longer a free man. He had been married for over a year to Ernestine Campbell, a well-mannered Catholic woman working as a church secretary. Their 1,959 wedding had been celebrated by the press as Richard's redemptive turning point, especially after he publicly renounced rock to follow the faith. Still, when Richard returned to the stage in the early 60s, the old habits came rushing back. The 1962 tour marked his first long separation from Ernestine. And according to one crew member, he rarely called home and never mentioned his wife on the road. Instead, he made himself very clear. That boy's mine. His room needs to be next to mine on this tour. From the moment Billy joined the tour, Richard's behavior changed dramatically. He gave up his usual VIP suite and moved to a room near the tech wing just to be closer to Billy. On stage, he began bringing Billy out for organ solos, something he'd never done for any other musician. Every morning, people saw the two having breakfast alone in Richard's room with the door shut tight. Meanwhile, across the country, Ernestine remained at her church home in Washington, completely unaware that her reformed husband was risking his fame, marriage, and spiritual image just to keep a 16-year-old boy within arm's reach. Richard and Ernestine's marriage quietly ended in 1964. No scandal, no fight over assets, no public statement. But years later, in a rare interview, Ernestine gave a single chilling remark. "I thought I married a man looking for the light. Turns out he was just running from a different shadow. That shadow may have been Billy Preston." During that 3-month tour, the two were inseparable. In hotels from Atlanta to Birmingham, they ate together, rehearsed together, even attended church together on Sundays. But around this time, backstage whispers began to spread. One stage manager later recalled stumbling into Richard's room late at night to find Billy resting his head in Richard's lap as they giggled like lovers. There was nothing explicit, but the vibe in that room, it sent a chill down my spine, he said in a 1995 interview. Years later, even after Billy left Richard's side to focus on his solo career, their bond wasn't severed. In 1969, when the Beatles were recording Let It Be at Abbey Road, Billy suddenly showed up in London and was invited by George Harrison to join the sessions. What few knew was that Billy had been staying at Richard's house for nearly a week beforehand. A housekeeper remembered. They fought all night, then clung to each other, crying. I don't know what they were, but it wasn't just friendship. By then, Billy Preston was no longer the soft-spoken prodigy by Richard's side. Behind the scenes of his chart-topping collaborations with the Beatles, Stones, and Ray Charles, he spiraled into darkness. So much so, no one recognized him anymore. Backstage, he was infamous for outbursts, paranoia, and smashing hotel rooms during withdrawal fits. His cocaine addiction became so severe that his nose bled on stage during performances. But the most explosive scandal came in April 1977 when Billy was arrested by Los Angeles police for assaulting a man at the Neon Lounge, a popular underground gay bar in West Hollywood. According to police records, Billy flew into a violent rage after a heated argument at the bar. A witness said, I heard Billy scream, "Don't you dare say that name." Then he started punching like a madman. The guy didn't fight back, just kept saying, "He doesn't love you anymore." That name, many believe, was Little Richard. The press went wild. Though police withheld the victim's name, tabloids speculated he was Billy's new secret boyfriend. The trigger, mentioning the man who haunted Billy for over a decade, the artist who once treated him like property, who used to call him my baby on every tour. The story was quickly buried. Legal teams swooped in. No charges were filed. But from that point on, Billy Preston's name came with a warning label, dangerous. And Richard? He never said a word. In a disturbing echo, Billy himself was accused in 1991 of sexually abusing a 16-year-old boy in Florida. The case was dismissed due to lack of evidence. Still, his career withered. New recordings fell flat. He lived in isolation, never publicly addressing his sexuality. But those close to him confirmed that in private conversations, Billy once confessed, I never loved anyone like I loved Richard, but that's something I could never say out loud. In 2006, Billy died at 59 after a long coma caused by kidney failure and infection. In the 2011 biography, You Are So Beautiful, author Kenneth Wick wrote, Billy was a lifelong gay man who never felt safe enough to be himself. Singer Mary Clayton, a longtime friend, said Billy's death was freedom from a life he had to live in two halves. Little Richard, who gave up music in the 70s to become a preacher, never publicly mentioned Billy again. But in a final interview with Rolling Stone in 2013, when asked if he had ever truly loved anyone, Richard paused for a long time and said, There was someone, but I should never say his name. To the world, Billy Preston was the fifth Beatle. But in the shadows beyond the stage lights, he was Little Richard's baby brother, a casualty of a world that refused to accept the truth about gay black artists and the quiet love between them, though never acknowledged, lives on like a sorrowful ballad that was never written into words. 2. Sylvester, the queer disco queen who was once led into debauchery by Little Richard. Before Madonna, before even RuPaul or Prince, there was a thunderous voice out of San Francisco named Sylvester. He was the disco storm, the soul of wild nightlife, and the most flamboyant. openly gay icon of the late 72nds. But behind the glittering dress, the heavy makeup, and that radiant smile on stage was a hidden, dark, and deeply shocking chapter, especially around 1966, 1967, when Sylvester suddenly vanished from the church stages and queer community in Oakland, reportedly retreating to a quiet rental apartment near South Central Los Angeles. At that time, Little Richard had just shed his preacher persona, a moral mask he once wore to hide the fire raging inside his soul. In a March 1966 interview with Jet magazine, Richard didn't hold back. His words hit like a slap in the face to devout readers. He was living the life of a demon who could play piano. No more preaching, no more praying, no more gospel hymns, just liquor and nights that burned until sunrise. Around the same time, at a notorious underground gay club called the Purple Door, buried deep along Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, known as a gathering place for the lost, the lawless, and the genderless. A waiter named Manuel Gonzalez recalled something strange. Every Friday night, as the purple neon lights flickered like blood trails in the haze, Richard would show up alone, and then not alone. Beside him was a skinny black boy in a deep red sequin dress with heavy eyeliner, gliding like smoke across the dance floor. He sang like a fallen angel, but when he danced, it was like he was possessed. Every move screamed sex and dared you to watch. No one ever asked the boy's name, but those in the know whispered it. Sylvester. From the moment their names became linked, performances at the Purple Door stopped being parties. They became rituals. Rituals God was not invited to attend. In June 1966, a bizarre incident occurred at the El Cortez Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Housekeeping was instructed, do not enter room 409 for 3 days. A VIP was staying there. One rebellious staff member later said he opened the door and was stunned. Little Richard was lounging in a fur coat, laughing loudly, while a young man, described as black, wearing a shiny leather bodysuit and a silver wig, was singing and dancing on the liquor table. Cash was strewn across the room, and the intimacy between them was unmistakable. That young man was none other than Sylvester. Hotel management issued a warning, and both were asked to leave by June 14th, 1966. After that, Sylvester vanished from the local music scene. He stopped performing with the Disquotes in San Francisco, stopped attending church, and went completely off the radar for nearly 2 years. Then in 1969, he re-emerged at the Castro Street Gay Fair, his first public appearance in full drag, a slashed silver gown and shoulder-length curly wig. When asked why he'd shifted to feminine performance, he simply smiled and said, "Someone very famous once told me, either burn bright or disappear." Many later believed that person was Little Richard. There were nights backstage at the End Up nightclub when Sylvester half-jokingly would say that Richard had opened my eyes to indulgence, to what men can do together without shame. A former backup dancer confirmed. He once blurted out while drunk, "If it weren't for Richard, I'd still be singing gospel with moaning old ladies in church." That awakening came at a price. In 1973, Sylvester was banned from performing at the New Orleans Jazz Festival after organizers discovered he was a male transvestite in revealing clothes. He was arrested in Atlanta in 1975 for public indecency after appearing in a sheer fishnet dress on the street. It didn't stop there. Sylvester became entangled in multiple sexual misconduct allegations. A young dancer named Marcus sued him in 1978 for detainment and sexual coercion in a dressing room, though the lawsuit went nowhere. Whispers spread about his lover auditions among his dance troupe, a habit some former performers said he picked up from a fiery old man in Los Angeles. That same year, in an interview with Interview magazine, Sylvester was asked bluntly, "Did you live with Little Richard in 1966? He just smiled mysteriously and replied, "I lived with someone who made love through a piano." In the years that followed, despite becoming a disco sensation with the hit, "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real," Sylvester lived as if in hiding. He avoided questions about his past, especially his Los Angeles chapter. Close friends said he often woke up in the middle of the night screaming, "Richard, stop," as if haunted. In 1988, Sylvester died of AIDS-related complications, taking to the grave the erased years of his early life. But among his belongings was a faded photo dated May 1966, showing a curly-haired teenager sitting beside a man in a lion fur coat holding his hand tightly as they smiled under dim neon lights. The photo was confirmed to be taken backstage at the Purple Door. The man was Little Richard, and the boy beside him, long before he became an icon, was Sylvester. Back then, he was just a child learning how to become mighty real through a forbidden love. 3. Simone, Prince's shadowed best friend and his strange tie to Little Richard. In the shadows of Prince's glittering spotlight, there was always a figure. Sharp, mysterious, and equally provocative. Simone. He was Prince's childhood friend, creative ally, and the quiet bass player who helped shape the sound of Minneapolis funk. But beyond talent, Andre was also known in underground circles for his shocking gender-bending style. Midriff-bearing crop tops, tight leather pants, shimmering lip gloss, and a stare that defied gender norms. And just as Prince began to ascend, Andre mysteriously disappeared, sparking rumors that he had entered into a secret collaboration with someone no one expected. Little Richard. In late 1979, Little Richard launched a tour called Back to Rock and Roll Roots, traveling through northern U.S. cities. When the tour hit Minneapolis, a few members of Richard's crew were replaced due to contract disputes. On that replacement list was Simone, who had just quit Prince's band, out of frustration with being overshadowed. According to an unpublished internal memo from Midnight Chariot Agency, the company managing the tour, Andre was hired to play bass for Richard during 3 shows, December 12th to 14th, 1979 at the State Theater in Minneapolis, followed by Milwaukee and Detroit. But something strange happened on the night of December 15th. Both Richard and Andre vanished from the Plaza Hotel in Milwaukee for 48 hours. A stage tech recalled that Richard personally told hotel management not to disturb them in room 9006. He said that the whole floor was just them. Every time staff brought food, it was left outside. You could hear funk music blaring down the hall, but no one ever opened the door. One anonymous staff member shared, "I had to go in once after hearing loud banging like a fight. But when I opened the door, I froze." Richard wasn't wearing anything, just a towel sitting at the organ. Andre was stretched out on the sofa, midriff showing, eyes red, like he'd been crying or high on something. The room was full of smoke and smelled like nothing I can describe. After that night, the Detroit show was suddenly canceled. Richard disappeared from the schedule for a full week. Andre flew straight back to Minneapolis without giving any explanation. What's strange is that from that moment on, Andre's music and public image shifted completely. His debut solo album, Living in the New Wave, 1982, carried a strong gospel funk vibe reminiscent of Richard's early days. Soaring vocals, ambiguous lyrics, and emotionally charged keyboard sections. On the album cover, he wore a mesh shirt, dramatic eye makeup, and stared into the camera with a haunted expression. In a 1983 interview with Smash Hits magazine, when asked why he had embraced this androgynous, sacred, and insane persona, Andre simply smiled and said, "Someone once told me, God has no gender. I'm just trying to find a higher self. Many believe this was a direct parody of Richard's bizarre sermons during his late 1979 spiral into debauchery. Not long after, Andre's career began to collapse. He lost his recording contract with Columbia for refusing to tone down his too weird, unmarketable style. Rumors leaked about a video showing him in intimate contact with a male dancer circulating within New York music industry circles, tarnishing his image and branding him as toxic to the market. Though he never publicly discussed his sexuality, Andre was widely rumored to be bisexual behind the scenes in Minneapolis, where whispers of love triangles and secret all-male orgies among Prince's inner circle ran rampant. In the unpublished memoir, Jungle Love and Basslines, a former Prince assistant wrote, Andre was obsessed with Richard. He called him the prophet of rebellion and always said he didn't feel truly alive until he was locked in that Milwaukee hotel room for 3 days. Andre eventually withdrew from the spotlight, focusing on producing and songwriting. He married 3 times, all ending quickly in divorce. Those close to him said he became reclusive, rarely seen in public. In a 1997 letter to an old friend, Andre wrote, I don't know who was right or wrong, but I do know I lost my soul somewhere inside the sound of an organ played by someone I should never have touched. And maybe that's what little Richard left behind. Not just immortal songs, but a slow-burning fire planted deep inside sensitive souls like Simone. A fire too hot, too forbidden, and too real to ever be fully told. 4. Frankie Lymon, the teen star who burned out in the arms of a legend. There's something haunting about Frankie Lymon's voice in Why Do Fools Fall in Love? It's as pure as an angel's, yet underneath it lies the cry of a child who never had a real childhood. In less than 3 years, Frankie went from being a national icon to a lost shadow consumed by addiction, scandals, and a tragic death at age 25 on the cold bathroom floor of his grandmother's home in Harlem. But before the world witnessed that fall, someone else had seen Frankie's fragility and may have exploited it. That person was little Richard. In September 1956, when Frankie was just 13, he and his group, the Teenagers, were booked to perform alongside Little Richard at a major showcase at the Paramount Theater in New York. Many believe it was the first time Richard noticed the boy with the angelic voice and panicked eyes. In a backstage photo captured by freelance photographer Marvin Haskins, Richard is seen hugging Frankie from behind, both hands resting on the boy's shoulders. But the look in Frankie's eyes, unlike a child thrilled to meet an idol, seems like he's forcing a smile through trembling. Within weeks, rumors began circulating among the tour crew that Frankie often visited Richard's room after performances. A lighting technician named Clyde Wilkins recalled, Many nights I'd see Richard have chocolate milk, marshmallows, and records sent to his room. Little Frankie would sit in there all night. By the time we started clearing the stage at dawn, he'd finally leave. Eyes red, shirt wrinkled. In January 1957, the two joined the Package Show of Stars tour across the American South from Alabama to Tennessee. The tour was notorious for its lack of backstage supervision, especially for underage artists. A local stagehand in Mon, Georgia, Richard's hometown, claimed to have seen Frankie walk out of the motel with Richard, barefoot, smiling like he was hypnotized with a very visible bruise on his neck. When questioned, Richard laughed and said, That kid needs love, and I'm the only one who knows how to give it to him. This wasn't the first time Richard had been accused of preying on vulnerable young male singers. But with Frankie, there was a disturbing attachment. In a 1962 interview with Ebony magazine, Richard said, Frankie Lymon was the kid I loved most in showbiz. I once thought of adopting him, but life didn't give me that chance. Frankie's career unraveled in 1958. Separated from the Teenagers, His solo contract flopped, and by age 15, he was hooked on heroin. The boy wandered from city to city, making up stories, scamming money, falling in love recklessly, and running from it all. In a 1963 arrest in Baltimore for vandalism, police found a necklace in his pocket engraved with RNF forever, later believed to stand for Richard and Frankie. Rumor has it that around 1964, while Richard was working in a New Orleans studio, Frankie came begging for a chance to record. A studio worker claimed Richard initially refused. But when Frankie burst into tears, saying, "I've got no one left," Richard held him close and brought him into the studio. But the session was never released. Some say it was destroyed that very night out of Richard's fear that evidence of what happened would survive. Frankie's life spiraled further. 3 murky marriages of questionable legality, a charge of financial fraud, a girlfriend's forced abortion that led to public outrage. But the most chilling account came from his ex-wife, Zola Taylor, member of the Platters, who said, "Frankie once screamed while drunk, 'I haven't been myself since I was 13. He took my soul.'" On February 27, 1968, Frankie was found dead from a heroin overdose in his grandmother's bathroom in Harlem. When asked about Frankie's death during a 1969 TV interview, little Richard bowed his head for a long time before saying, "Some people you can't save, no matter how badly you once wanted to keep them close." Frankie Lymon was the shattered symbol of youth that never had a chance to grow up. And perhaps the most heartbreaking part isn't how early he died, but the possibility that someone may have loved, owned, and manipulated a soul so innocent it never even knew it was being hurt. 5. Jackie Shane, the first transgender woman of soul. In a time when the music world trembled at the thought of confronting gender and identity, Jackie Shane emerged as a quiet but powerful force. One of the first openly transgender artists in North American music history, Jackie didn't chase bright lights or headline stages. Instead, she built a legacy in the soul scene of Canada. But few knew that before she left the U.S. for a life of seclusion, Jackie had a fateful brush with someone no one expected, Little Richard. Born in 1940 inches, Nashville, Tennessee, the so-called gospel capital of the American South, Jackie Shane was never a normal child. By age 13, she was wearing dresses to school, powdering her cheeks, and telling family members she was not a boy. At a time when the word transgender didn't even exist in common language, Jackie dared to live as if gender norms had already shattered. Her rebellion terrified her family. She was pulled out of school, locked in her room for months. But Jackie never backed down. In late 1955, at just 15, she ran away and joined a traveling church band using the male name she had been forced to carry throughout childhood. But after every performance, she would slip backstage, change into a dress, apply makeup, and wander the streets alone at night, whispering to herself, "This is who I really am." At 17, Jackie cut ties with her family for good and entered the world of nighttime performance in Jackson, Memphis, and Birmingham, cities where police could arrest her simply for dressing the wrong gender. Night after night, she sang under dim lights, dodged cameras, and always kept a men's shirt in her bag just in case she needed to transform to avoid arrest. In Alabama, police interrogated her for 12 hours because she couldn't prove she was a man. In Georgia, a band fired her from a tour for being too gender uncertain and making audiences uncomfortable. Some nights, bottles were thrown at her on stage, crowds shouting, "What the hell are you?" And Jackie stood tall, singing like a church bell through the noise. What shocked people most was her bravery in an era when no one else dared to live out loud. Jackie wasn't a drag queen or a theatrical crossdresser. She lived, spoke, loved, and suffered as a woman in a body the world refused to accept. Backstage, male performers shoved her for daring to sit at their table. In women's restrooms, she was thrown out for frightening others. Yet, Jackie never agreed to return to being a man. She once told a colleague, "I'd rather die in a dress than live another day in the suit they forced on me." Jackie Shane wasn't just a pioneer. She was a living indictment of an industry that rejected voices brave enough to be real. Because she lived so truthfully. In the summer of 1962, Jackie was invited to open for Little Richard during a 3-night run at Liberty Theater in Mon, Georgia. At the time, she was still a rising act, but her bold, gender-defying style silenced the crowd. Dressed in glitter with straightened hair and piercing eyes, Jackie caught everyone's attention, including Richard's, who was also known for his eccentric, gender-blurring image. After the first show, Jackie didn't return to the hotel with the crew as usual. She reportedly spent the rest of the tour in close proximity to Richard. A member of the production recalled that the two were nearly inseparable for the next 2 days. They ate together, rehearsed together, and often kept the door closed to their shared hotel room. Though nothing was ever officially confirmed, many believed their bond crossed professional lines. Perhaps it was empathy. 2 artists, each carrying a different kind of loneliness, finding kinship in a space untouched by the world. And after this encounter, Jackie's life and career took a new direction. Just weeks later, she left Georgia and moved to Toronto. There, she began performing in soul clubs and quickly became an icon in the local LGBTQ+ community. Her hit, "Any Other Way," became a statement, not just for its sound, but for how boldly and unapologetically Jackie expressed her truth. Still, Jackie always kept a careful distance from the press. She rarely gave interviews, never spoke about her Southern past, and especially avoided questions about her time with Little Richard. Some close to her said she spoke of him with a strange mix of gratitude, sadness, and something impossible to name. In the years that followed, Jackie kept performing in Canada, but never signed with a major label. She avoided mainstream fame entirely. No tours, no cameras, only performing for those who truly saw her for who she was. By 1971, Jackie vanished completely from the music scene. No one knew where she was, what she did, or if she was even alive. It wasn't until 2016 that the press confirmed she was living quietly in Toronto. In her final appearance on CBC Radio, Jackie spoke briefly about her life, that she had no regrets about living authentically, even though it meant isolation, loss, and darkness. No one else could understand. And so the 5 names are now revealed. 5 men who once crossed paths with Little Richard in the shadows. One was a child prodigy. Another, a disco princess. Some died young from addiction. Others lived in hiding just to escape a nameless memory. But now that the truth is out, a scarier question remains. If even his wife didn't know everything, can we really believe the list ends at 5? Leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for the next secrets that are waiting to surface.